morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lesson 29, Part 2, where we're going to connect dividing fractions with dividing decimals. And if you're wondering, hey, where's Mr. H? Because on the second day, Mr. H usually is the one that's sharing a video. I understand that, and I'm sure you'll miss him for the time being. But I wanted to present the second part for a couple reasons. The first is that I want to show you the 100ths. We didn't focus on the 100ths yesterday. We just focused on dividing by tenths. Right? So that's one reason why you have me. The second reason is Mr. H does a lot of the work mentally, and I want to do some of our work in a model form so that you have an understanding of why that mental work makes sense. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. And I'm going to start first on this problem of 1 6/10 divided by 0.01, or another way we might call it is 1 6/10 divided by 1/100th. These two are equivalent. Right? And if you are unsure to see the connection about these, I recommend looking at Lesson 29, the We Do video, where I break it down a little bit more and put it on a place value chart. All right? So, as I'm working through this, you can just watch. If you have a scratched piece of paper or the left side of one of your Lesson 29 pieces blank sheets, you can certainly work on that. All right? But I'm going to first draw a model. And I'm going to draw a model of one whole. And again, being an awesome math genius, I'm going to label this. All right? Now, I could cut this up into a 1/100th and do a second 100th, a third 100th, and that tends to be a little difficult. There's so many lines. Right? But another way we could think of it is if I take this 1/100th, and it's really 1/10 times 1/10. Right? Put those together, and we know from multiplying, we just multiply the numerators. 1 times 1 is 1, and 10 times 10 is 100. So this here is going to be really important. So I really can go ahead and do 1 6/10 divided by 1/10 to start. Right? So almost think about it as me putting some parentheses around this work here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this and divide it into tenths. So that means 9 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now I'm going to label this part as well. And this is going to be our 1/10. And what I'm really going to do then is take this other 1/10 that we haven't used, right? And I'm going to decompose this into 10 pieces. So that means I would need 9 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I gotta squeeze them in. 8, 9. Oh, that's so hard to do. And when we label it, we're down to this one little part being 1/100th. Now, would I expect you to draw 9 lines for 10 pieces for this one, and this one, and this one, this one, and for all of them? No. Can you certainly do that to help you in your understanding? Yes. You just have to make a longer model, much bigger. All right? But if we really think about it, this part here has 10 parts, or 10 pieces. This one in here is going to have 10 pieces. And this one 10 pieces. And this one, they're each going to have 10 parts, because you're going to decompose that into 10 more pieces. Why are we going to decompose each one of these into 10 pieces? Well, it's really 1/100th. So you decompose it into tenths, and then you decompose it again for 10 and 10 to give you your 100. So how many pieces are here all together? Well, all together it's going to give you 100 parts, right? Or 100 little lines or spaces in there. Okay? Now, the question being, it's not 1 divided by 1/100th. Right? It's really 1 6/10. So again, I would have to draw our second model. I'm going to have to decompose this again into our ninths or tenths in 9 lines. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines. And I want 6 of those. Right? So maybe I get my highlighter out here and I want 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I want 6 of these. Now, how much is that when we're talking about hundredths? These are tenths. I would have to then take my work and decompose these just as I did into our 9 lines. Right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Squeeze them in. But we know that there are 10 parts. There are 10 parts if we decomposed it. 10, 10, 10, and 10. So in this model, in the 6/10, there's really 60 of them. Right? 60 parts. How many do we have all together? Right? Well, we have our 100, and we have our 60. So we're going to get 160 pieces, 160 parts, or 160 hundredths if we had to put a proper label to it. Right? Now, I'm going to take a step back for a moment, and let's look at this multiply by 10 here. Right? If we really think about it, that we could think of this in another unique way. So I'm going to add a new page. And I'm going to, again, do 1 6/10 divided by 1/100th. Right? And if I was doing this here, and I put this in, let's say, how many tenths in one whole? Right? Well, in here we know, well, let's get a different color, that this is going to be 10 tenths. Right? So one whole is 10 tenths. And then if we think about how many tenths in 6/10, again, there's 6 in the tenths place. How many are there all together? Well, there's 6 of them. 6/10 is the same as 6/10. So then, how many tenths in our one whole and 6/10? Well, that's going to give us 16. That is really quite important. This here is saying basically, if we had to rewrite it, 1 6/10 divided by our 10th. But we didn't do that really, did we, in our last one? We really want 100th. Now remember, in our 100th, I had our 100th, and I said, well, really, it could be 1/10 times 1/10. And we rewrote it as 1 6/10 divided by 1/10. And I said, oh, let's put these parentheses around it. And then we're going to multiply it. Right? Well, we're really multiplying it by the 10 parts. If we know our tenths, which is 16, or 16 total parts, and we're doing it, and there's going to decompose it into 10 more pieces, right, for each one, you're going to get 160. 160 parts, or 160 hundredths. Now, this is that part mentally that Mr. H would talk about here. Again, 160 parts. If we went to our last one in pictures, we came up with 160 parts, or 160 100ths. Right? Notice that connection there. Right? So if we go now into our workbook, page 132, if I was doing this mentally, and knowing that it's really 5 divided by 100th, and this would be a great time for anyone who feels pretty comfortable with this, pause the video, try to solve them, and then play it again to see how you did. Right? So in this case, how many 100ths are in a whole? Right? If in a fraction form, there's hundredths. How many would you need to get one whole? You need 100 of them. As we know, 100 100ths, right? You have 100 parts, you have all of them, equals one whole. So how many hundredths are going to be in 5 wholes? So here's another hole, another hole, another hole, and another hole. There's 5 holes. So you're going to need 100 100ths, 100 100ths, another 100 100ths, and our last one, 100 100ths. And another way of just looking at it. How many 100ths are there? Going to be 500. Oh, what's our answer of 5 divided by 1 100th? You're going to have 500 parts, 500 pieces. If we looked at it in a model form very quickly, I would draw a fairly large model. I'm going to draw 5 of those. I would also label at least one of those. There's our 4th. See if I can squeeze in the 5th one down here. Still trying to be neat and organized. And we're going to decompose it into hundredths. But in order to get there, I might need to turn this 100ths into our tenths to start. So our 9 lines, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, put in our 9th. Okay? And I would do that for each one of these, have our 9 parts. Right? And you can think of it as, well, I need to decompose this again 10 times. Right? So there's going to be really 10 parts here, 10 here, 10 here, 10. And each one of those is going to have 10 pieces to it. Right? And knowing that I really should label at least one of these as 1/10. Right? So how many pieces are going to be in this whole? 100. And just as we had here in this little quick model. So that means this one would have 100 pieces, this one would have 100, this one, and all of them would have 100 pieces. How many pieces altogether? 500. Again, I did it in mentally here. I did it in more of a fraction model here, and then I drew our tape diagram model that would help you too. All right. Now, if we did it one more, we have 2/10 more. Right? Well, if we know that there's 500 hundredths in 5 wholes, we just did it over here, how many hundredths are in 2/10? Well, instead of drawing it all over again, right here, here's 2/10. I can label it 2/10. There's 2 out of the 10 pieces. How many hundredths are there? There's 20 of them. So how many all together? How many hundredths? Well, put them together, add them up, find the sum, 520. And you can, again, do it in model form or even in fractions. If we wanted to do it in fractions, right, we have 2/10. We can make equivalent fractions. Oh, we haven't heard that in a while. We had to multiply by 10, so we have to multiply the top by 10 to get 20. 20 100ths. Look at that. All right. So that's a quick breakdown of this here. If you are still a little bit confused, check out our shorter we do version of this hundredths for our lesson today.